How about setting some preferences here inside Illustrator? Let's take a quick look. On the Mac side, head up to the Illustrator menu way up in the top left corner. Here on the Windows side, I'm going to go to the Edit menu and head all the way down to Preferences. And then I'm going to start off with General here. Okay, so there's the General Preferences dialog box. A couple of quick things to point out. Keyboard increment right off the bat here. This is something I'm going to show you a little bit later on, but what I can do with my arrow keys on the keyboard is if I have an object selected, I can hit my arrow keys and nudge it around on my artboard in Illustrator. And I can choose the distance of my nudges using this keyboard increment setting. So I usually wind up setting this guy quite low, but you can of course set this to whatever you like. Couple of other options you might want to try out. Use precise cursors. That's especially useful when you're using the paintbrush and a few other tools there. Show my tool tips. In other words, remember those tool tips that we saw when we were hovering over top of the tools inside the toolbox? Another command that I find myself turning on and shutting off, depending on what it is I'm doing, is scale strokes and effects. So, again, if I had an object selected and it had an outline on it, or a stroke on it, or maybe it had some kind of a special effect on it, like a drop shadow or something, and I made that object larger or smaller, I can come in here, and with this option turned on, I can scale those effects and stroke weights. Or I could turn it off, and as I resize the object, these strokes and effects would remain unaffected. Now, there's many more preference panes to go through here. I'm not going to go through them all. I could drop down the Preferences pull-down menu way up at the top here and cycle through my preferences. Or what I could do is I could use the Next and Previous buttons here over on the right. So if I click on Next, that'll take me into the next preference window pane here. Something you may want to consider keeping on is highlight anchors on mouse over. We'll talk all about anchor points and paths, but if you're new to all of this, you may want to keep this option turned on. I'll click on Next again. That brings me into my type preferences. You can check out all of the preference panes if you like. I'm going to jump all the way down to User Interface. Now, this is something else that's new here inside Illustrator CS4, is I can adjust the lightness or the darkness of my Illustrator interface. Why? I have no idea. Maybe you're having a glum day and you want to give Illustrator sort of a dark, dreary look. I have no idea. But anyway, you can monkey around with this a little bit. What I think would be cool is if I could actually change the color of the Illustrator interface. But anyway, something else I wanted to point out, open documents as tabs. Remember, we have these tabs across the top of the Illustrator interface whenever I open up multiple documents, right? If you don't like that behavior, if you like a more traditional Illustrator behavior where the documents get stacked one on top of each other, just uncheck this option. I'm going to leave mine on, but you can certainly decide how you want to handle your multiple open documents.